Remember, Shane Jones said, well, the whole point of the fast track approval legislation is to make sure that blind Freddy the Frog can't stop progress in this country. Well, this is ironically a wind farm, $1 billion worth of investment. And it was designed really to be in terms of the electricity capacity we need in this country, to go a long way to certainly meeting those particular needs. But what's stopping this? You'll be surprised. No, it's not. It's not blind Freddy the Frog. No, it's blind as a bat bats. That it's a native bat that apparently can fly, despite apparently having sonar tracking available to it as part of its species and its miracle of, well, flight and everything. It apparently flies into wind turbines. So the real reason that the amazing $1 billion project that's going to electrify 150,000 homes and a whole lot more besides, and be there forever in Wyndham, in southern Southland, is because of a bat, a native bat, whose sonar capacity is so poor that apparently it might fly into some of these turbines once they're up and started. Now, I'm sorry, but I'm a bit on the pilot whale people. If your sonar is so bad, then you don't deserve to be called a bat. And if you are going to fly into turbines, which admittedly you would expect them very quickly to work out that they're there, after all, they've been hanging around for a long time. But no, all right, but no. And so this panel, which was set up to deal with this fast track particular project, has said no. There are bats in the belfry, literally. So the Southland Wind Farm, say Contact Energy, is an important project to support energy security of supply for all New Zealanders, whether it be in their homes or for the industries that support the economy and the communities in which we operate. The growth in demand for electricity as New Zealand moves away from relying on fossil fuels means that projects like this will be critical. Well, no more. 2, 3 commissioners have decided that bats are far more important than people. And as a consequence of that, bang. Joining us to talk about that, because this is exactly what the Fast Track Approvals Bill or Act was meant to get away and get rid of, is the Minister of Resources, Shane Jones, and he joins us now. Shane, thank you so much for joining us again, mate. What the hell is going on?
Thanks for having me on the show yet again. One of a range of interactions I look forward to. Look, I want to very clearly explain what's happened to New Zealand, which is exemplified by this wretched decision. New Zealand is hurtling towards a profound energy crisis, if we're not already there.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, successive governments have left legislation in place which gives greater importance to the effects of a development upon amenity values, i.e. visual clarity that people might value. Secondly, landscape values and concerns such as energy security, energy affordability have been deprecated, they've been decreased. Now, we've had this for 20 or 30 years. We passed our fast-track legislation, which would have guaranteed such a project will have passed. That project covers over 5,500 hectares. The debate got down to between 300 to 500 hectares. There was a small area that could not be mitigated, and the proponents offered to restore a wetland in an area not too far away from the site of the area which had caused all the conniptions. That was turned down. It's turned down by the same 3 people who killed and aborted the Ngaitahu aquaculture scheme off a distant part of the South Island coastline. These 3 ideologically barren pygmies have decided that they've got more power than the elected representatives. They've got more power than the people who will likely suffer inordinate energy costs this year. But no, they've decided that their view of amenity values is inordinately higher and more superior to 5 million New Zealanders. That's why we need the fast-track legislation, and we need to ensure that these witless, toothless fairy godmothers never sit on another panel.
Okay. These, and they're also anonymous because I don't know who they are at the moment. And
Their names are in the newspaper.
Okay. All right. I haven't seen that yet, but I intend to find out who they are. Are you saying that this particular panel, the independent panel that's declined the resource consent for the Contact Energy wind farm, are you saying that they were appointed under previous legislation prior to the Fast Track Approvals Act?
Yeah, they were appointed Jacinda Ardern's regime. They were not appointed by our government, because this decision, this sinister anti-growth, anti-development, anti-New Zealand decision is a carryover of Jacinda Ardern's fast-track regime put in place, I think, in between 2020 and 2023.
Right. Okay.
Now, Michael,
So what? I just want to clarify this.
Yep.
So this particular project was turned down under the fast track legislation that this government introduced.
Yeah, this project has been terminated by the fast track regime under the Jacinda.
Right. So that was the COVID-19 Fast Track Consenting Act. Okay, gotcha.
Correct.
Yep. And so, well, then here's the question. It's been turned down under that particular act. Might they be able to apply under yours?
Absolutely. When the Ngaitahu Aqua Farm was turned down prior to the last election, they made an application under our legislation. And that application is sitting there ready to be activated by them when they're ready to push the go button.
Right. So the potential, rather than, because Contact Energy is saying this morning, Shane, that they've spent $20 million on this project. They're prepared to invest another $100 million just to get it over the line. But that's their potential legal costs in the process, and the years, I could imagine, as well. Are you saying that a better option for them would be, in actual fact, to abandon going under that piece of legislation and apply under yours?
Yeah, I'm saying under the brand new fast track, that project could never have been turned down on the basis of multicoloured skinks, bats, and other such examples of catastrophizing nature.
Yep. Okay. All right. So really, the other thing about the fast track legislation under the previous regime was that they can only appeal this decision by those three commissioners on points of law. Now that I imagine everything's a point of law. You know the background to that as well. But does that mean that this thing sits in abeyance and continues to go through a legal process? Can you and your government intervene to overrule this particular decision?
Of course, we could easily draft some legislation. And just as Christopher Finlayson drafted legislation to give Pukeahu the Soldiers Memorial down at the Basin Reserve a resource consent, of course we could do that if we were of a mind to.
Is that an option?
Well, I would need to take that up with the Senior Minister, Chris Bishop, and it is a bugger of a way to run your economy every time you have a permit that's being turned down on the basis of highly questionable ideological grounds, that we use Parliament's time to end up doing this. I mean, Waimea Dam is another example. I think the deeper problem, mate, is that the legislation does not give primacy to development in energy. Our legislation gives primacy to development. But David Parker's legislation gave primacy to the resource management criteria that has been so encrusted with dangerous anti-growth jurisprudence from the judicial system that under the orthodox approach, I do not believe that Contact Energy will be able to build their wind farm before 2035. It'll take 10 years.